All right, dude. I think we're live.
All right, we're live. Excited, super excited for this.
Super. Guys, this is Damon. And for those of you in Damon's audiences, my name is Jonna. Damon, you and I go back way back. It's been years at this point.
Yeah, that's right. Was it probably 3 or 4 years? I know.
Something like that.
Yeah, so the two of us worked together at Agency Lab back in the
Yep.
day, back in like
Yep.
2020, 2021, I think in that
We were
range.
just baby employees working for somebody else. And since then, both of us have started our own companies in our zones of genius. For me, that's operations. And for you, that's been copywriting and marketing.
Yeah, that's right. Crazy. Always great to reconnect here with someone
Yeah,
that
dude.
I go way back with.
Yeah.
And see how far you've grown and everything these last couple of years. So.
Yeah, you as well. You as well. And I'm really excited for this conversation because we were chatting about, what would be of highest value to our shared audience. And on your end, you do an amazing job of talking about copywriting and marketing and scaling marketing teams. And on my end, it's all around kind of the operations of doing that. And so we thought, how fun would it be if we came together, shared our expertise with each other's audiences, and tried to bring a fresh perspective to people who are probably tired of hearing us and seeing us talk all day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting, marketers as a whole, a lot of marketers are just creative types,
Yeah.
they write copy, they think of crazy ideas, they make ads, they make ad creatives, but from an operational standpoint, when it comes to things like SOPs, hiring, running meetings, managing a team, like a lot of the stuff that's I would say not necessarily as important at a lower level, but
Sure.
at like a larger level for, if you're working with a company that's making millions of dollars a year, this stuff is extremely important. And I'd say a lot of marketers are pretty bad at it, to be honest. Holds a lot of companies back. So yeah, I think it's super important stuff, kind of the intersection of those two.
Yeah, I
So.
agree. So we were chatting what would be highest value, and we landed on a topic which is essentially like the evolution of a marketing team, right? You and I both ultimately serve the CEO, the entrepreneur, the founder, and generally these people are their own marketers when they start out. At some point they bring in maybe one, maybe two, like a marketing VA or like maybe one other kind of marketing talent, but really who we work with are these companies and agencies that are scaling from 7 all the way up to 8 figures and beyond. And when you hit that stage of growth, it's a totally different ball game, right? Like the sheer volume of marketing to-dos has exceeded what one person or what one really small team can do. And so you and I think have seen it all when it comes to marketing teams that have scaled gracefully and scaled well, have supported the goals of the founder, and marketing teams that never quite got there and the company stalled out as a result.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I take a lot of consulting calls, through just a couple of strategic partnerships of mine. So, I've worked with some companies like Closes.io, for example, or 0%, who are hitting pretty massive numbers, like $4 to $5 million a month in that
Yeah.
type of range, who
Yeah.
have like a very, very established framework. They have a solid marketing team in place, and it's an actual team. It's not just, one man or woman doing
Right.
literally everything. It's a
Right.
fully built out team,
Yeah.
which we can talk about kind of breakdown of that in a sec.
I think that'd be
But
good.
yeah, on the flip side, I've taken hundreds of calls with like
Mm,
online businesses that kind of are, $200,000, $300,000 a month in that type of range. It's just that kind of one business owner who's just hustling.
yes.
They're just doing literally everything on marketing, and not just marketing. They're running the business, they're running the sales team, they're doing the operations,
Right.
managing the finances, and
Right.
it really holds them back.
Yeah.
I think I see a lot of people who put a lot of emphasis on scaling the sales team. There's
Mm,
a lot of time, money, effort that goes into building out the sales team,
yeah.
and then they're not doing the same on the marketing side, which ultimately kind of caps them out. So.
Right. Right. Yeah. So let's talk about it. So this is for anybody who is, at that 7-figure run rate. I would say at least you're probably 1 to 2 max people on your marketing team right now. And like you said, Damon, like you're trying to do it all, right? Like, yes, you wear the marketing hat. You're probably great at it. You probably love it. You probably wish you could spend more time there, but you also have to be sales, client success, operations, all these other functional departments. And the company is essentially continuing to scale and grow, and you don't have enough time to just do marketing. That's not a reality anymore. So, Damon, what do you see as like the initial team or let's say this, like, what are the roles that a founder needs to be thinking about, eventually and systematically, like, plugging into their marketing team to build a team that's truly equipped to scale them to 8 figures?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. Is it possible to share my screen on here, by
I
the
think
way?
so. Guys, we're trying something new right now, so I actually have no idea. Yeah, down at the bottom, share screen, the screen with the arrow. Do you see
All
that?
right. Okay. Yeah. So I got a doc on. Can you see this?
Uh, yes, we got it.
Okay. Cool. So this is kind of like the org chart, I'd say. I mean, I guess these are not all roles necessarily, but if every really big time marketing team I've worked with
Mhm.
that has made a couple $1 million a month, these are kind of, I would say, these are the non-negotiables. Like you absolutely need all of these.
Okay,
Everything else. There's a couple others like an SEO person, for example. But
sure.
I think if you want to really hit some big time numbers with your company, um, these are kind of non-negotiable. So first and foremost, you need a CMO. You need someone who kind of leads the ship. I'd say someone who runs everything. Someone who is just a very good marketing mind as a whole. They know how to think about marketing. They think like a business owner. They don't think like a copywriter. Um, for when Jana and I were working with Agency Lab, this was Mark Coulter for
Yep.
us. He was basically doing literally everything on the market. He was kind of what we just talked about before.
Yeah, the one man
He was
show.
doing exactly, yeah, until we were about $700,000 to $800,000 a month.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, and I think that worked for him because Mark's extremely talented. He's a very high level marketer.
Yep.
In addition to that, he had business partners. He
Yep.
had Sergio, he had Joel, so he wasn't taking sales calls and stuff like that. So,
Yep.
he was able to do everything
Yep.
until we were at that massive run rate. I
But
would
that's
say
not
like,
normal.
yeah, that's tough to pull off.
Yeah.
Most people that's probably just not going to work, in my
Yep.
opinion.
Yep.
I think like having a CMO in place, there's a couple different ways you can approach this, but I think that if your company hits like a right around like $300,000 a month, you should either be like considering it. It should be a thought in your mind. You
Yeah.
should be looking at making a potential hire for, I would say, a fractional CMO at
Yep.
that point.
Yep.
Now I will say this is, I mean, I'm obviously biased because I'm a marketer,
Yep.
but I think this may be like the single hardest role to hire for.
Mm.
And
Why?
there's just not many people who can do this at a very high level, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
And the ones who are able to are, usually like not available. That's
Right.
kind of the hard part.
Right.
Um,
And I'll weigh in on this from the operations side, Damon, because what I see a lot of people do in the marketing department and frankly in all departments is that they try and hire this really high level strategic thinker, this expert in the role, who also is willing to like show up and write copy on their day-to-day social media posts, right? So the reality is like the marketing department has rungs of the ladder. You have the highest level person in that department. That's the CMO. That's the strategic thinker. This person is highly experienced. They're pretty expensive. And it's frankly a waste of your money to try and hire in this really high level person and then have them do really low value tasks. You're just paying a lot of money for tasks that aren't that expensive. And so, what I like about your suggestion of the fractional CMO is that you're getting, think of it as like the thinker and the doer. You're getting the thinker and you're only buying enough of their time required to do the actual thinking. And then you can start to kind of build out this foundation of doers across different functional like expertise in the marketing department, all run by this one thinker, but you're not paying for a thinker to be a doer. That's ultimately going to cost you a lot more money.
yeah, exactly. You hit it right on the head there, Jana. It's, I mean, if you're at that kind of run rate, let's say your company makes $2 to $3 million a year. Realistically, like I think that you probably just can't afford someone
Right.
who
Right.
is at this level.
Right.
If you want them to be full time, like if I was going to go full time into a business right now, I would personally like demand equity.
Right.
Like it wouldn't really make sense because I can take like 3 of these roles,
Right.
make way more money. And
Right.
then also for me, from like a risk standpoint, obviously clients can churn. I don't really like to put all my eggs in one basket.
Sure.
It doesn't really make sense to hire like a full-time CMO because they might suck. They might not be very good. That's
Right.
always a risk.
Right.
In fact, that's a massive risk, because if you're spending, say, $50,000 a month, $60,000 a month on Facebook ads, you've got another 20, 30K in payroll to manage.
Yep.
Not
Yeah.
only from a cost standpoint, like overhead cost standpoint, but from an opportunity cost standpoint, very bad if you make a bad hire here. So
Right. Totally.
um,
Okay.
I would say, yeah, right around like $300,000 a month, you should probably be looking pretty seriously at making this hire. Because, realistically, like as a business owner, I think you want to be able to step out of, not necessarily step out of marketing entirely, but
Yep.
you want to be out of the weeds. You don't
Yep.
want to be in the ad accounts, duping ad sets out, stuff like that. So
Yeah. And I'll even add to that, Damon, like at that size, you don't have time to be in the ad accounts. So even if you wanted to be, the business needs you elsewhere. The business needs your focus elsewhere. And so even if you're an amazing marketer, even if you would be an amazing CMO at your own business, you're the CEO. The company actually needs you to take off that hat and just be the CEO of the business. And I find a lot of founders struggle to delegate this. It's what's called like the zone of excellence, right? Something they've become really, really good at. And because they're really good at it, they want to hold on to it. They don't think anybody will ever do as good of a job as they will. And it's really hard for them to step out of it and hand it off when the reality is your company, like your highest value to your business is no longer in the CMO role. It's actually in the CEO role. And in order for marketing to still get done well, someone's got to wear that hat. And so if it's not going to be you, you have to find a person that you can trust, even if it's only fractionally, to wear that highest level strategic thinking hat in the department.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. One thing, Jana, that you did, I think, really well when we
Mhm.
were working together at Agency Lab was you had us spend a lot of time defining roles.
Yeah.
Like what does this person do?
Yep.
Like if we're going to hire someone new on the team, let's say we're going to hire a copywriter. Just getting clear on like what exactly it is that they're doing.
Yeah.
Because for a CMO, it's one thing I found in my last fractional CMO role was it's very easy at that kind of level to just you end up getting stuck doing everything.
Right.
I was managing the sales team. I was hopping on call reviews daily with salespeople, stuff like that. Because
It's
end of
ridiculous.
the day, I'm incentivized on rev share
Sure.
largely, so
Sure.
I'm going to do whatever it takes to grow revenue.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's like that's not the highest leverage move you can make.
Yeah.
Um, you
Okay.
know,
So
so
we've
one
got
thing we
this like
found,
fractional CMO, the strategic thinker role. What is the team of doers that is going to have to be like scaled out and built out beneath them on the road to 8 figures?
yeah, okay, so a couple more here. I'd say the two next ones that are very key are copywriter and media buyer.
Okay.
As a CMO, you don't want to be writing the daily emails. You don't want to be writing the IG posts, things of that sort.
Yep.
You also don't want to be like really deep in the weeds on the ad account.
Mm,
Um, I think that if you can make these hires, I would recommend doing these two in a more of a freelance capacity.
okay.
Um, like just being real, like good copywriters don't really go full time.
Interesting.
Similar, unless you're going to work for Agora,
Sure.
and you
Sure.
have massive rev share set
Mm,
up. It's just if you're good as a copywriter, you're probably not going to be full time.
okay.
So I'd recommend hiring a true copywriter, not an email copywriter.
Okay.
That's
Wait, break
kind of
that down for a moment. What's the difference between a true copywriter and an email copywriter?
yeah. So more of a true copywriter, in my opinion, can kind of write everything. They can write a VSL, they can
Yep.
write long form copy,
Yep.
they can write ads. Versus email copywriters I'd say it's kind of like a biz up these
Mm,
days.
mm,
Same with like high ticket closers, for
yeah.
example. You kind of need them, but at the same time, the large majority of them, they aren't really that good, to be honest. So I'd say more of someone who's like a proven copywriter who is solid. If you can get them, pay them well, I'd say like someone who's charging less than like $5,000-6,000 a month in a freelance capacity, like you probably should avoid realistically.
Interesting.
Um, so I would focus on hiring them, pay them what you've got to pay them realistically so that you're a priority for them.
Mhm.
Um, and same goes for media buyers. With media buyers, I'd recommend, I know a couple agencies that do good work, but most are not the greatest in my opinion, just because they're a business in themselves.
Right.
They're trying to bring on more clients.
Right. You've got other priorities.
Right. Yeah. Like if you can get a good freelance media buyer,
Yep.
who just has like a smaller scale client roster, I'd say that's kind of that's the sweet spot there. I'd go freelance for those two hires. So
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say around, the fractional CMO role and then really kind of fractional copywriter and media buying, like what I'm extrapolating from that, Damon, is that even as you're on the path to 8 figures, you don't need a full-time copywriter. You don't need a full-time media buyer. What you need is really good execution. You need people who have the expertise and the experience that if they're only going to show up and give you a couple hours a day, they're highly productive. They're doing the right things that are going to create maximum leverage and growth for the business. And so your money will be better spent hiring fractionally, but getting really good talent as opposed to try to hire in full time and acquire somebody full time, but maybe they be not as good.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's if we're looking at the difference between kind of sales and marketing, a lot of times sales is I would personally not hire a part-time salesperson.
Mm,
Um, just because split focus and everything. Sales
sure.
is a lot of volume
Right.
versus
Right.
with marketing, if you get a good copywriter in who cranks out a killer VSL, I've seen companies ride like one good VSL, maybe a couple good ads to like pretty high
Right.
numbers.
Like multiple 7 figures.
Yeah, and that's a very leveraged activity.
Yep.
That's not you don't have to like work 8 hours a day to write a good VSL
Right.
full time all the
Right.
time. Like you crank it out, you make a couple tweaks on a monthly basis. Same with the ads.
Mm,
Um, like you said, I'd rather just get someone in who is good, who knows what they're doing, give them the freedom, don't micromanage them, give them the freedom to like do what they've got to do.
yep.
Um, Ideally have them incentivized like on performance in some way.
Yep.
Um, I think that's a lot better than like hiring someone full time who, probably isn't that good.
Yeah. I will say there's one other model that I've seen work really well, but it's more costly in terms of time. And this model is, Damon, if I can use you as an example, it was you, dude, when you were starting your copywriting career, right? You were brought in full time into Agency Lab. You had a ton of growth potential. You were super, super hungry, and you were working and studying and learning so hard under the direct like tutelage of Mark, right? So in this company, it was a unique case where they had a full-time CMO who was also a co-founder of the company, who was bought in, was going to spend 100% of his time building this scalable, robust team. He brought you in for, I'm sure, a fraction of what you're worth now, but really poured into you and spent a lot of time with you to train up your skills so that you became a super valuable asset to the business. You were the recipient of that. Would you recommend that other founders go that route, or were you like, no, I just got lucky and definitely don't do that for your own copywriter?
Yeah, that's a great point you bring up because for the right situation,
Yeah.
I'd say that's perfect.
Yeah.
Like for me, like when I was working under Mark, was I, making like an enormous amount of money? No, but from a learning standpoint, it was incredible.
Yeah.
It's like most copywriters, they don't have like a copy chief, so you kind of need that to get good at copy, I'd say.
Yep.
And not just from a learning standpoint, but from like a networking standpoint too. Um, and I kind of did the same thing next. I went and worked full time for Cole Gordon,
Mm,
because like for me, that was a killer opportunity.
right. It's a
It's
learning
just,
opportunity.
yeah, like I think Cole is one of the biggest names in our industry right now.
For
And,
sure.
being able to work under him like directly, learned an enormous amount during that time period,
Yeah.
really helped me step up my skill sets.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I think you have to be like the type of person who commands a really strong brand name in order to make that work. I think there's plenty of copywriters who would take a step back, get paid, I don't know, $5,000 a month or something to work full time for someone like Cole
Right.
because he's Cole.
Right. So
Um,
maybe that's the lesson there. Like, again, we're talking to the CEO founders. So if you're a Cole Gordon, right? If you've got the kind of brand equity, if you've got the kind of amazing business vehicle that really talented people would take a pay cut just for the opportunity to work with you and for you, then maybe you can get away with that. If you are, let's just be honest, like if you are not differentiated in your market, if your job offer is pretty comparable to every other job offer out there, you're probably not going to be able to attract the best talent full time. And at that point, it's better to just go fractional.
yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
got it.
And one caveat on there too. When I will say, in addition to like the learning experience and stuff, a lot of these big name companies like Close.io,
Yeah,
like, yeah, you've got to be full time with them, but they also pay extremely well. You
there
know,
is that too, right?
um,
They've got the budget to earn the best talent.
yeah, like for a lot of these people, like I remember seeing maybe a year or two ago, like Taylor Welch put out a post like, "I'm hiring a copywriter, $300,000 a year salary." You
Right,
know,
right.
um, like yeah, there's the learning experience, but they also back it up with the money too.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah,
so yeah,
it's a good
but
point. Okay. Are there any other key roles of a marketing team that you think the average CEO needs to be aware of on the road to eight figures?
yeah, a couple more here. So next up, I would say like those are the most important ones. If you can nail those three,
Yeah.
you're in a good spot. But there's a couple kind of intangible ones here that I think people overlook
Mm,
sometimes. The next one is having like a face, in my opinion. Um, especially in 2024, if we're looking at how good marketing teams are, the way the world is going, essentially,
yeah.
people buy from people, not
Right.
companies
Right.
necessarily.
It's the personal brand.
Um, and if you have someone like when we were at Agency Lab, like Joel Kaplan, for
Yep.
example, going on stage all the time,
Yep.
always speaking on stages, has a
Produces
massive
so much
IG following.
content. Yep.
Yeah, his face is everywhere.
Yep.
You can't escape him. You go on YouTube, you go on Instagram, you go on TikTok.
Yep.
It's just he's always there,
Yep.
and you have to. I think that's really valuable. If you have someone who's a face who's willing to sit down and do content hours and hours each week, that can be the CEO of the company. It can be usually it's not the CMO. You can
Right.
hire like a UGC person potentially.
Interesting.
Um, Probably not the best long term move,
Sure.
but companies like V-Shred, for example, Performance Golf, like they do a lot of kind of UGC stuff like that.
Mm. But you wanna
Um,
put a human to the marketing, and so making sure that you have a human, whether that's in the team or somebody that you hire out, you wanna have a consistent face with the brand.
yeah,
Mm.
exactly. It helps a lot having that just because someone's got to do it. I
Yeah.
would say it's probably not fun. Most people don't want to do hours of content per week, but it makes a lot of money end of
Yeah.
the day.
Well, and from
Um,
an operations perspective, I'll double click on that really quick, Damon, because I'm the face of my company, right? But I've now, partnered with a video content editing team. I have an in-house social media manager. And with just those two roles filled, I essentially show up at a podcast studio every other week for 2 hours. I create a bunch of content. And then sometimes I'll just like have a phone kind of filming me as I'm just like literally just going through my day-to-day work, doing my coaching calls, that kind of thing. And just between that, there is more content that we could possibly post every single day. So I think people put a lot of impetus around like, well, how much time is it going to take for me to like create this content and be this face and be this brand? But remember that you only have to be the face. You don't have to be the video editor. You don't even have to be the social media poster. You don't have to be the copywriter writing the captions. You literally just have to be the face. And if you can build systems and team to handle everything else and to literally kind of do it without you, then it actually is not as time consuming as I think most people think.
yeah, totally. If you can get that was another thing I had on my list actually, like videographers,
Yeah.
photo editors, like you don't want to be doing that stuff.
That's the real time consuming stuff. That's real. Yeah, and there's
Yeah.
amazing agencies out there, I think, who do that. Like, I'm curious to hear your perspective on this statement, but like a video creation team, that's so many roles in and of itself, right? Graphic designer and video editor and, like audio and like all kinds of stuff. Um, I have found the best success with just hiring a specific content creation agency because they come with all of those roles ready to go, as opposed to you having to hire like four people.
Yeah, that's Well, that's great you bring that up. If you have recommendations for that, I think that's actually a pretty big pain point I see in a lot of my clients is,
Yeah.
similar to copywriters and closers, I think short form video editors are a bit of a biz op nowadays.
Mm.
Um, and I've had some, I've went through a couple, I will say.
Sure, sure.
Um,
So I'm working with these guys, Story.ai. They have a whole app. It helps prompt you for like different pieces of content, different content ideas. And then they've got an entire backend team that does all of the editing, posting. They're really receptive to feedback around your brand and the presentation of those videos. So I've been really impressed with them so far.
okay,
Yeah,
nice. Yeah, that's solid to have in the arsenal for sure. It's very
for sure.
important.
For
So,
sure. Yeah.
um, then, all right. Well, last one for you. I think this is also kind of flies under the radar, but this is really important.
Mm,
Having like a good tech team in place. Um, for example, at Agency Lab, we had Aaron Delzensky, who
yeah.
was, overloaded at all times. I think that people don't really recognize, like at scale, if a business is running multiple offers, have a bunch of different funnels going, the amount of like zaps, the amount of automations, like delivering products when people buy a low ticket product, pulling people out who are no longer clients, like there's way more than most people realize from a tech and automation standpoint. And also CMOs, like I said before, they're creatives, they
Yep.
forget about this stuff.
Yep.
So if you can get a good HubSpot person or a good Go high level person or someone who's just, they love this stuff, they're good at it, it'll save you so much time. Totally
Yeah.
worth the investment. So
That's huge. Cool, dude. I'm gonna have to run here pretty soon, and I'm sure you do as well. But thanks so much for hopping on and taking the time to share this knowledge with us. Like, if I was to recap kind of the big takeaways I have out of this conversation, it's as you're looking at your marketing department and scaling it, think about all of the specific hats that need to be worn and ask yourself, what is the most like cost effective way for me to fill this hat and spend and like purchase just enough time to fill this hat? And the solution there is generally freelance, fractional, like you can bring together a team of really, really experienced experts as opposed to winding up with a full time in house team of 20 plus people to get you to your goals. It can be and should be simpler and more like cost effective than that.
yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a Moneyball
Yeah.
approach of sorts. You're using limited resources to maximize the results and
Yeah.
kind of get small wins over time.
Love it. Love it. Damon, what's the best way for people to hit you up if they need your genius and support in this?
I would say on Facebook.
Cool.
Yeah, I can drop a link below. So
Okay, perfect. Guys, Damon is honestly, he's like one of the best in the business. I absolutely stand by that statement. So I really appreciate you like sharing all of this genius.
absolutely, and same to you. I feel like operations is just one of those things. Like a lot of people are letting it fall through the cracks. I've worked with Jonna personally on several occasions. She
Yeah.
absolutely crushes it. So if you're looking to hire, recruit, consult, whatever it is, she's got you. So
Appreciate you, dude. All right, we'll talk soon, all right?
thanks so much.
Take
Take
care.
care.
Thanks.